Hello ladies and gentlemen, Top Hat Gaming Man here. And back in March on this channel, I made somewhat of an emotional response video regarding a visit I made to CEX. Basically, one day I went in there and I saw a Nintendo DS game I wanted to procure and add to my collection. So in the excitement of finding this game I really wanted, I picked it up, purchased it and took it home. When I got home, however, I realised something was slightly wrong. The edges on the box's in label were slightly jaggedy, so I pulled the inlay out of the box to see a massive CEX logo emblazoned on the inside of the paper. And then feeling the paper, I also realised that it's just regular print paper. So I quickly come to the assumption that it looks like CEX were making their own counterfeit inlays in their game boxes, which is frankly outrageous in my opinion, because they made no attempt to tell me this and they sold me the game at top eBay prices like it was a regular complete in-box game. Like, personally, I find that rather disgraceful, and whilst doing this I thought I would inform the world of these practices. So I asked everyone out there in the world of Twitter and YouTube to ask them whether they had the same sort of experiences. And in response, I got all sorts of pictures and videos sent to me. Like, there was a ridiculous amount of annoyed people who all uploaded videos explaining similar experiences. In fact, whilst doing this, I also got into contact with a gentleman who ran a small YouTube channel called Pomelo Pictures. He only had around 500 subscribers at the time. However, he brought my attention to a great little video on his channel where he had made a really in-depth investigative, that's the word, piece on what had been going on. And since then he's made an entire series of these wonderful videos covering this tomfoolery in which CEX have been involved in. And in fact, in the last few months we may have been quiet, but he has brought a lot more information to the forefront on his channel. So due to this reason, I have decided that I'm going to showcase that video right here, right now. Because his channel's quite small, you see, so far this amazing video has had just over 1,000 views, where quite frankly I think a lot more people need to know exactly what CEX have been up to lately. So roll the video.
Hey guys, Matt from Pomelo Pictures here, and yes, I know it's been a while since part 3, but there is a good reason for that. You see, part 4 was all written, in fact it was all complete, but things have been changing in the background that could make some of it a bit irrelevant, so it was no longer needed. But let me try and bring you up to date. Until now, CEX has still refused to talk to me, but that doesn't mean that they've just gone into hiding and aren't doing anything about it either, but I'll get onto that in a little bit. Now, throughout this process, I've had a lot of support from gamers, but I've also had a few people thinking that I'm making a big deal out of nothing. I've had the inevitable comments about, why should I care so long as the game is real, or this is only an issue for collectors, or just generally calling me an idiot that needs to get clued up. Well, let me address a few of those comments. Firstly, just on the getting clued up issue. Now, it has been looked over by a lawyer, and there are potential breaches of copyright and trademark law, so you can argue with me about getting clued up all you like, but unless you're a judge, I'm not really interested, so if we can just move away from that, that would be great. So moving on, this is not just an issue for collectors. I need to stress this. This affects everyone, whether you're just interested in the game and don't care about the box or not, because you are being charged full price for a boxed game, and yet once it's in your possession, it's no longer considered a boxed game. What I mean by that is, you can't take that to another store and expect to get full trade-in credit for it. I've already had confirmation from stores like Game and Basio that you will not receive full value for those games if you try to trade them in. For example, here's a copy of a PS4 game that someone tried to trade into Basio and it was rejected because it didn't have the box, even though it did have an aftermarket case and a CEX printed cover. Now, at this point, you've now lost out on money that you should have been entitled to because CEX lied to you and said it was all fine. But what's more ironic is that the same guy brought it to that Basio store because CEX refused to take it. Despite CEX's claims, many stores won't even accept their own stock back as trade-in, but even if they do, as they've stated that they will on Twitter, that can bring big problems for you, the customer. CEX stating that they will take printed covers, even though a lot of stores actually won't, is encouraging people to knowingly sell or distribute copyright or trademark infringing products, and that can potentially bring criminal charges for you, not just for CEX. Even if the claims that CEX is somehow paying a license fee to do this are true, even though businesses have stated that they don't sell licenses, that wouldn't necessarily extend to you. So if this was all true, CEX would have to have a publicly available policy on this to protect them and also to protect you from legal implications. But they don't, they just have a few contradictory tweets. And doing all this is also at the detriment of other businesses. This isn't just happening with older games, but also games that are currently in production. So CEX are damaging the rights holders and also first-hand sellers, not to mention the fact that while they claim to only reprint covers from games that have been damaged, again not an excuse, see Nintendo vs Blockbuster in part 1 of this investigation, but it's also just not true, as games like this have come through stores. Now that's not even a commercial release, that's a promotional copy of the game that's used mostly for press reviews and never had a cover in the first place. There's no damaged cover for this game, it never even existed. Now, in terms of CEX offering good trade-in value and good prices for games, now I'm not going to dispute that, but speaking to someone who used to work for the CEX stores in Dublin, this practice of reprinting covers seems to have massively increased in the last year or two because it helps stores hit targets, as stores have both a buy target as well as a sales target. Particularly as the stores in Dublin that he was referring to would quite happily take unboxed games, like the ones we just saw, and send them to the supposed print centre to have covers produced, sometimes over 40 or 50 at a time, often turning a €10 game into a €30 game. Something that CEX, by the way, claimed that they didn't do, but that doesn't mean that store managers didn't do it anyway so that they could hit their targets. Now, as I said, I've had multiple people telling me that CEX pays someone for the rights to print covers, but so far there's not only no evidence that this is true, there's also no evidence that such a thing even exists. There's no such thing as a blanket license that grants permission from every video game and movie company, including rating system bodies as well, particularly when I can go to the Nintendo website right now and show that they don't provide such permission. Never mind cobbling together covers with mixed assets, as we've seen in some stores. I even had an ex-CEX employee go on a long Twitter rant stating that CEX pay somebody, but when I asked her who, obviously she didn't have an answer for it. I don't know if this is just some internal lie to shut the staff up. And not only that, but in one of her tweets, she even confirmed that when she worked there, she accepted games without cases. That's the whole point about artificial inflation. At that point, you're printing covers to justify the market value that they like to wang on about so much. And I don't care how many times CEX want to claim that they've clearly shown on the covers whether they've been reprinted or not. Because when you use opaque cases, which they do with some games and DVDs, you can't see that marking without taking the sleeve out, which you can't even do with some of the cheaper discs because they've started sealing them over. Now, to be fair, this is probably being done because a lot of the cheaper discs are now being put in the cases on the shelves to save staff time at the tills, and don't want someone pulling it open and nabbing the disc, which makes sense. But any reprinted cover won't be discovered until much later, and don't give me any bullshit about return policies, because it's still not an excuse for copyright and trademark infringement. Now, also, can we just go back to the whole thing about taking or not taking reprinted covers back to CEX stores? Can I also mention that while some employees have said that cases do get sent off to be reprinted, there's supposedly no dedicated print centre that deals with all stores, as CEX claims there is. While some stores do seem to have access to this, sometimes also referred to as the media centre, not all do. I had a long Skype call with someone who used to work across franchise stores in Northern Ireland, and he confirmed that they do not have access to any print centre at all. If any printing of covers is being done, it's being done by those stores using whatever artwork they can get their hands on, and mostly on an inkjet printer behind the counter. But some stores in the UK can't even be bothered to do that, and just use black and white photocopies. Now, as I say, things have been going on in the background, and I'm amazed at how many staff and ex-staff have been willing to talk to me about this. But CEX Corporate can't even make a generic statement. Either they can't be bothered or they don't want to implicate themselves any further. But either way, for those that have reached out and I haven't had a chance to discuss things further with you, I do apologise, but you have to understand there has been a lot of you. But there are a few glimmers of hope, as firstly, some stores seem to have started using the manuals as covers. Now obviously this isn't ideal because manuals get stolen, etc, and it'd still be easier to just print off generic covers like other stores, but it's at least a step in the right direction. But not only that, there are a couple of other developments. Firstly, while there's been no official announcement, a number of stores have now implemented a practice of informing customers when they take the game up to the counter and then checking to see if they have an official case. This obviously doesn't get around the legal issues, but again, it's a step in the right direction. However, since this practice started, I've also heard from a franchise store that a decision has been taken to stop this practice of reprinting covers completely. Now, I don't know whether this is a nationwide thing or specific to a certain area, and it may also be limited to franchise stores only. I'm not sure, because information is not easy to come by, as CEX refused to make a statement. They even stopped using their trading standards line on Twitter over a month ago. Now, I'm not going to say where I got this information from, because I still want to have access to that information because it's so hard to come by. But basically, one store in England refused to take an Xbox One game with a torn cover, and the reason they stated was that they were no longer allowed to print a replacement cover for it. So, while there's been no public announcement about this, at least not one that I've seen, and no apparent start date either, it does seem that CEX store owners, or at least franchise store owners, have been told to no longer do this in the public interest. When pressed for a reason and what they mean by in the public interest, they weren't able to say. Now, I can't claim it's because of these videos, but I have a feeling that these, along with others, have informed customers and IP holders enough that they've pressured CEX into making a decision like this before they face any further legal action. That, as well as trading standards sniffing around too. Of course, this doesn't mean that they're not still selling reprinted covers that they already have in stock, as pretty much as soon as I heard of this, I headed straight to the store itself, and sure enough, they still had reprinted covers on the shelves. In fact, they even had a Paper Mario for the GameCube pride of place on the shelf behind the counter with a reprinted cover and a £50 price tag. Not to mention that a quick look on Twitter shows that some reprints are worse than ever, with Xbox covers being used for GameCube games and PS4 covers being used for Vita games. So this is by no means over yet, but it does seem that we've maybe won this round, or at least we're winning anyway. It's hard to tell for sure, of course, because CEX still refused to talk to me. I wonder why that is. But regardless, something has happened and is happening with CEX, and it's partly because of these videos and mostly because of your support. Because whether CEX have been given cease and desist orders by IP holders, or it's just the sheer volume of disapproval from customers, this could be the beginning of the end of this dishonest and frankly illegal activity. So while I'm not wanting to jump the gun with a whole mission accomplished attitude, just in case it turns out to be a George W. kind of thing, I do still want to thank everyone that has helped, as well as everyone that has reached out and everyone that has provided information. But that's not a thanks from me, that's a thanks from the gaming and the game collecting communities. However, the fight's not over yet, clearly, so keep at them on Twitter, keep asking questions, and until next time guys, I'll see you later.
That was a fantastic piece, wasn't it, ladies and gentlemen? We can all thank Pomelo Pictures by subscribing to his channel, as hopefully he will have a part 5 of this investigative series into CEX up on his channel shortly. And apart from thanking Pomelo Pictures, I would also like to thank each and every one of you in this process as well, because you have all continued to mount pressure on CEX and upload regular pictures and videos online exposing exactly what they have been doing. And after a conversation I've had today on Twitter with Pomelo Pictures via DM, he also had this image to share with me. And this is further evidence of the pressure we've been putting on the company appearing to finally work. So, after all of this, although at this moment in time CEX do not appear to be apologising or admitting anything in regards to their misconduct, but at least it seems like they are trying to backtrack a little bit and attempt to fix this situation somewhat, as their practices appear to be changing, well, at least in some branches from what we can see. So, ladies and gentlemen, to finalise this video, I would like to hear one more thing from you, and that is how your recent experiences have been, like in CEX. Let us know in the comments section if you have seen any changes lately whilst visiting these corporate store chains. Have you noticed many counterfeit box inlays in the stores at the moment, and if so, are they labelling them more appropriately so that people actually can tell they are reprints? I'd be curious to know how it's progressing for you in your towns. So, ladies and gentlemen, it does appear that us, the little men, can actually achieve something against these huge corporations if we basically shout loud enough. Which is fantastic, really, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? That platforms like YouTube basically give us a voice. Amazing, isn't it? So I will see you soon, and make sure you all go over and subscribe to Pomelo Pictures. Cheerio!
Born in London in '86, a stachio gent named Richard Parliament. He loves to wrestle, but he loves one more thing: handhelds round the world. He fights in his comments and he argues with fans. It's a problem no one understands. If there's two things he loves, it's gaming and handhelds round the world. Drinking fine wine, fighting fanboys, handhelds round the world.
Top Hat Gaming Man.